Welcome everyone on the top of Mount Manitoba, the place where Notinhalloffame generates from. And I've got Evan Nolan, my co-host. Did I not tell you that I would have a bunch of guests at some point?
Tell me there are gonna be a bunch of guests. It's just nice I can make it this time.
All good, all good. So this is a combined show. It's the Hall of Fame show and a reaction show where we're looking at those who got into, well, not got into, but they're going to, the senior class on the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And thank you all for being here. Say hi, say hi, Celebrity Squares.
Hello.
Hello, 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 hello.
Okay. That only worked for people who remember the 70s, but we tried. Before we sort of go into that, Evan and I want to promote a few things that we do. Not only do we run notinhalloffame.com, but we run the fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, the fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Evan, I'm going to let you sort of like take over for this one.
Yeah, more importantly, the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. I didn't know if you guys knew, but there is no National Sports Hall of Fame for the United States of America until recently. And you're looking at the co-founders and chairman and president of the organization. So we've been having votes online. We had a group that helped us put it together, or the nominees, I don't know, about 15 months ago now.
Well, some people are here who were part of that too. So.
That is true. And we're going to have the first class officially announced. You said November 1st, correct?
November 1st, yeah. So you can vote on www.notinhalloffame.com/USA. So it's not just a bunch of dweebs who put this together. Not that I'm saying that we're dweebs, but hey, Richmond Webb, 7-time Pro Bowler, is part of that group.
And potential future Hall of Famer.
That's right. Chris Huffins, Olympic bronze medalist in the decathlon, is on that group. Also, Dan Steele, another Olympic bronze medalist. Hey, I know some people, not just these guys.
Don't forget Wayne. Wayne Mabry, the nicest, most terrifying looking person you're ever going to meet.
No, we all love Wayne. And all of you, we're going to be doing, we're going to be putting something together, Evan and I, where we're going to really be promoting over the next month and a half. And I think all these people here are going to be part of that. We'll reach out. I think part of that debate thing that we were talking about, right?
Yeah. So I'll be reaching out to folks. It's big news. It's big enough that I actually broke down and joined Instagram. So
which is a big deal.
I know that's saying something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that will be coming out over the next few weeks. We're going to start having content up on that, and we'll let everybody know.
Now, for those of you who are let's just get right to the main event. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they have announced the 3 finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And based on our group and some of the conversations that we've had, let's just be blunt. This isn't 3 that we've had. But before we go any further, let's just congratulate those who got that far. And we really should. Well, okay, the center square does not agree, but realistically, let's just say it's a big deal. And I think that the fact, and this is just my opinion, and I'm going to open it up shortly, that the fact that it took this long for those 3, and we're talking about Ken Riley, Joe Klecko, and Chuck Howley, to get here is not an indictment of those 3, but more of an indictment of the fact that the Pro Football Hall of Fame took a long time to actually get into existence. And once they did, it took a little bit longer for them to start inducting people.
Yep. I say so.
Yeah.
Start inducting who?
Inducting people.
Anybody.
And with a sufficient amount of inductees based on the roster sizes that's prone to football compared to other sports.
Right. The years left empty slots and all of that other stuff.
And I think that's a big reason why we have this backlog. And Evan, you and I, we talk about this stuff all the time. And Ron, you were part of our little hockey group, so were you, Chris, and Vinny. Hockey doesn't have the same problem because it started in the 40s. Baseball, to a lesser degree, in the 30s. We don't have this backlog. When hockey from COVID had a year off, it didn't affect much. That would be my wife. Ignore that.
You should
Recording
say-
it for posterity.
Oiled machine.
You should say her, Kirk, not that.
That.
Wah, wah.
I don't know what her pronouns
Well,
are.
no, ignore that sound.
Kirk
fine.
is the
I'll go
ladies'
that
man.
route.
They do it different, Jack, on Mount Manitoba, or wherever the hell.
Is the word that a pronoun up there
Oh,
or something?
guys, obviously I
Canada?
knew he was
Okay, first off,
referring,
we do
using
everything
that.
in metric over here, but anyway.
He was using that to refer to the call, and I was saying you shouldn't call your wife that.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Collins.
Hoser is a pronoun up there, Vinny. Come on now.
Okay, fine.
All right.
That's Hall of Fame
What's the beer
pronouns
and
we're talking
sausages,
about.
eh? Strange Brew. Do you watch Strange Brew like?
No, I've never seen Strange Brew as a Canadian. That's never
you-
been something I've seen ever.
Have you seen Murdoch Mysteries? That's a really good show over there.
No.
Oh,
Let's-
I watch my
let's-
dad all the
let's-
time.
I'm reining everybody back in here.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you.
This is my role on this network, as you guys have probably figured out at this
Well
point.
done.
All right, so I think should we look at the three who got in? And let's do that. I want to start off with Ken Riley, because I think Ken Riley is one of the most interesting person to me who got this far. Because if we would have done this 10 years ago, I honestly think that Ken Riley would not have been in the radar of any of us. Am I right or wrong? What do you think?
I think you're pretty accurate. I think
Eight-year-old
really-
Vinny already knew about him.
No, actually, I didn't. With me, I would say when it comes to Ken Riley, the stats were always there and there was always some interest. But for the most part, when it came to Hall of Fame inductees for potential Bengals, the one that was most people's radars was Ken Anderson. What really made Riley come to the center stage was because Bengals fans were talking a little bit more on social media. And around that same time, Ken Riley died. So that made a whole push that kind of catapulted his name all the way up to the top. His son was starting to be more vocal. Other people involved were being more vocal. And, I should pull myself here because I kind of got lumped in this as well. As, I'll be honest to you, I kind of played a big part in making this even happen for him. A lot of Bengals fans, as a result, were able to, contact other people that were in the Hall of Fame, like John Stallworth and James Lofton, Charlie Joyner, and numerous other names that were able to say what they thought of him back when they played him. And, that just really kept momentum going to the point where Riley was even getting higher attention than Anderson. And sure enough, here he is. He's basically going to make it. And I almost feel like I'm partially responsible for this. Like, oh my God.
So you're in part to blame then.
Okay.
No.
Well,
But
Did it for
let's
his
go back.
family.
Jack has brought up a lot of points about like when we were trying to look at how did Ken Riley even surpass Lamar Parrish?
Yes. How is a guy CB2 on his own team? How is one guy a 7-time Pro Bowler as a corner? And this is a time where the Pro Bowl positions were voted on by players and coaches. How is one guy a 7-time Pro Bowler, 8 times total if you throw in his rookie year as a returner?
Mhm.
How does that happen? Even when George Allen did some grading in the mid 70s, Ken Riley had a good grade. Lamar Parrish had an elite grade along with Michael Haynes and Mel Blount, like some of the best of all time. And Lamar Parrish can't even sniff the top 25. And Ken Riley makes the final 3. Ken Riley was a good player, but there's a reason he doesn't have more Pro Bowl honors, is because he was not viewed as that level of player. One stat, yes, he had the 65 INTs, but let's be honest, part of the reason he has those INTs is because he was targeted a lot more, because Parrish is often considered Dion before Dion. So he wasn't getting as many targets. And even when Parrish did get targeted, when he did pick the ball off, he made more big things happen. His team won a larger percentage of games when he had an interception as opposed to Riley. The reality is this, is that Ken Riley was a great guy, great Cincinnati Bengal. But it was kind of sad when you looked at the Pro Football Hall of Fame tweet that announced him. Like when you talk about Chuck Howley, you could list like a bunch of accomplishments. One of
I
Ken's
saw this.
accomplishments was the Ring of Honor for his team. To me, I look at him and say, that's a Bengals Hall of Famer, not a Pro Football Hall of Famer. You don't hear Jack and I going around saying James Big Cat Williams is a Hall of Famer. Like Big Cat Williams is a beloved Bears guy, one Pro Bowl appearance, so one more than Ken Riley. We don't go around calling him a Pro Football Hall of Famer. So this one, to me, when you talk about like the standards of the Hall of
But
Fame,
he's here.
shouldn't be. It also points to just how broken the process is, that a guy that was never a Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist, let alone semifinalist as a modern candidate, all of a sudden jumps guys like Kuchenberg and Gradishar. That's ridiculous.
I'll tell you something
Go ahead, Jack.
interesting that I'll tell you something interesting that sums that up. When Paul sent me the media guide for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2021. Obviously, what we're talking about is the class of 2023. So this is just 2 years ago. It is a fabulous. You should ask him to send it to you. It's a fabulous document. It is 387 pages. And included in those 387 pages is a listing of every Pro Football Hall of Fame semifinalist and every finalist, and of course, a number of other stats and things like that. You can do control searches on players. Ken Riley, no appearances. Joe Klecko, no appearances. And this is a document that is 2 years old.
And it just points to the fact that somehow these guys jumped the line, Jack, in my opinion. And it's a representation of the process being broken. It's going wrong. We're focusing way too much on retroactive player retrospectives from 35, 40 years after the fact. And we're focusing on squeaky wheels, get the grease, and let's make Bengal fans happy. Oh, they only have one Hall of Famer. They have Lamar Parrish. For Christ's sakes, they have Ken Anderson, who is also a finalist. You could even go Bob Trumpy. Like, they had other worthy candidates. Why did Bengal fans undercut some of these other guys so insistently to push Ken Riley? In my opinion, the wrong reasons, because the resume compared to others just doesn't match up. How did you go, to Jack's point? You've never been even a semifinalist. You said, Jack, 0 searches. So meaning he was never a finalist, never a semifinalist. But if you look for Kuchenberg, he was like an 8-time finalist.
Yes.
How does that happen?
And Kuchenberg should already been in. He was in the final 5 twice, and they didn't vote him in for reasons apparently.
That means the queue is whack and the whole process is fundamentally broken, especially if you're talking about structuring a new committee. Like, and Riley's not the only one. Like, Klecko was maybe a guy someday, but even the positional versatility is somewhat overrated. It wasn't like he was playing nose tackle and then stood up and played middle linebacker and dominated there too.
Okay, do you
So
guys
that's
think
what
that
Bill
with
did.
Riley,
Right.
there's a great story there, or at least I think there is. Again, we've all sort of agreed that Cincinnati is underrepresented. Whether they're pushing the right guy or not is up for debate. But here we have a guy who has all these picks, and he did this without playing defensive back in college.
So it has nothing to do with his NFL career. Dave Brown.
No, I hear you, but I'm just saying.
Dave Brown had 62 career interceptions. He played on another, what you would would have in previous years classified as.
But we're also in a post George Floyd world, where he was not allowed to even try to be an NFL quarterback.
Well, yeah, and
Big
again,
part of that.
that's a representation of something.
And I don't
moving along for the
know
wrong
if that matters. That doesn't. I was looking at Pro Football Reference today, and a couple of the ones where Riley did not get a Pro Bowl and Parrish did. In 2 of them, Riley doubled the approximate value. Is this the case too, where you have a lot of people looking back at, again, based on the research of Pro Football Reference, which I think we all subscribe to a point. Does this help? Is this a big part of it?
No, that 80 stack is something that can certainly be poked apart. I know Jack and I even talked about that before.
Mhm.
I think we looked even at some of the 80s Bears defenses. And I think at one point, I'm trying to remember who it was, but I think it was, no offense to Steve McMichael. I love Steve McMichael, but didn't he have like a similar grade to Walter Payton?
I think so. I think so. I think Jack knows a little bit more about that. Like as you guys were talking about Kent Riley, I was looking at Joe Klecko and just his his accomplishments compared to Ken Riley. You know, this guy was a defensive player of the year. Twice he was first team All-Pro, a second team All-Pro, 4 times Pro Bowler, sacks leader, George Halas Award. And if we just go by by everything I just listed, Joe Klecko has a better chance and has a better case for being in Canton than Ken Riley does. And I think you also brought up a point about the creation of these Hall of Fames. Like, for example, the Football Hall of Fame was created in the 1960s. Hockey was created in 1943. Baseball was created in 1939. I think basketball was 1959. So I also think back to what Deion Sanders even said. He said that the Hall of Fame, the candidacy, the Hall of Fame, the selection is broken, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. And the reason why is that you have so many players that are in this backlog. Like Sam Mills is just now getting into the Hall of Fame. Kevin Mawali, who played at LSU, he just now getting into the Hall of Fame. I think the backlog with the Football Hall of Fame, it's no damn different than what you see with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because a lot of our favorite acts, they're just now getting into the Hall of Fame. Like Linda Ronstadt, for example, she didn't get in until 2014.
And she had to lose her voice before they even considered her.
Right, she had to lose her voice. But also, but where I'm going with this is that some of these people, this backlog that we have with football is no different than what we're seeing with what we saw with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think it's insane to think about that.
Then Ryan, doesn't that mean that you should prioritize people that were at the head of the line at one point, not like artificially prop up those that were way in the back?
I think you have to focus on the people up at the top, at the front. I think you do. I think that's one of the things you have to do if you want to make this system a better system. You have to focus on the people up at the top, and you have to focus on people who are more deserving. Like everything I just listed about Joe Klecko, he has a bit better case to me than Ken Riley. And the reason why is, okay, he's 5th all time in interceptions. Okay, he's 5th all time in interceptions. Great, fine, awesome. But also look at the fact. But he also was selected to 1 Pro Bowl. 1 Pro Bowl.
0.
Ken Riley was selected to 0.
He was a one-time
All-Pro. One-time All-Pro. So if I'm on the Hall of Fame committee, and I'm gonna say this, I'm looking at, okay, did you make more than 1 All-Pro team? Did you make more than 1 Pro Bowl team? If you made 1 Pro Bowl team and 1 All-Pro team, you're just Hall of Very Good. That's how I see it.
So I think here's the thing, though, is that it's clear to some degree that the Hall of Fame committee or the senior committee, we hear sometimes about like the respecting the queue. And even when you look at the next 3 names that somebody called out, I can't remember who it was, Balzer or somebody else.
It was Kuchenberg, Sharp, and Gradishar.
Yeah, like you look at that, like that looks like a senior committee class of 3 that you say, wow. And what I'm going to say here to Ron's defense here, because I know he's been an incredibly big champion for Gradishar is one of maybe the 7 to 10 best inside linebackers in NFL history. Joe Klecko is probably in the mid-low 20s, high 30s in terms of defensive tackles all time. So just in terms of that, the whole process is skewed. How could
No, it isn't. No, let me just add something related to all that. Okay. And I think I have something that can frame it in a good way. I know there's some questions about the 2 before Howley. Okay. First off, Riley, take a look at Riley, and you have to go back to 2017 when they decided not to keep on ignoring safeties. And then it continued with Centennial when they looked at the safeties from the 70s, 80s, when it was a vertical passing game, and you had guys like Donnie Shell with 51 interceptions. So And so you had a lot of guys getting in. And then you look at Riley and see 65, and that's what kind of spurred him. But take a step back. We're all talking about the process, right? You're not happy about the process. It's messed up. The wrong people are getting in. Here's what happened though. Jim Porter just expanded the seniors committee from 9 to 12. In past years, that committee of 9 met as a committee of 5. So there's probably like a chairperson and 4 people one year, and then a different 4 people with the same chairperson probably the next year. So they had 2 lines of thinking. And if you look at it, Riley and Klecko were the runners up the previous 2 times. So when you put all these 4, 8 people, plus the chairperson, plus 3 newbies, they're probably going back and forth. The one thing they can agree on is we had a runner up, we had a runner up. Okay, fine, we'll compromise, get those 2 guys in, start anew. They got Howley in. The gentleman's 86 years old, 45th year of eligibility, in not great health. To me, that's the great thing to do. If Randy has to wait till next year, so be it. And then you see the fruits of that labor where you have Gradishar, Kuchenberg, and Sharp as the ones knocking at the door. They're like the equivalent of the golf ball being like a short putt to the hole. Now they could come up with the flavor of the year next year, but now you have the same 12 people back, and the process is changing. That's what I argue. And I've tried to convince people.
Well, if it's changing, how is it changing for the better?
Well,
I appreciate and respect that you're trying to be kind
Jeff,
and nice here,
yeah, but they had to do it this year.
They didn't have to do anything.
Well,
they could have put Gradishar in where he deserved to,
but
Riley and Klecko.
I understand,
like, it's okay to say that.
We've all been in work groups where that's the same kind of like parallel, right? Where, okay, we got to decide on something. Okay, you guys had this, we had that. These guys are deserving as Hall of Famers, maybe not as much as some of the others. I'm a Riley fan.
So
I'm very happy.
Corporate crappy decision. That's what
right. But they had to get it started to go forward. And if you look at who was the next 3, then they've got it going in the right direction for next year and the year after. And hopefully Jim Porter and the board can get it expanded to get the seniors addressed a little bit more. It's headed in the right direction. That's what I say. And I've had people in Denver freaking out that the world's against Randy and Dr. Z and all this other stuff. And it's not that at all. They did the right thing. I mean,
I agree with
you. Didn't do the right thing though, because they didn't put in what you could look at and say these are the 3 most deserving people. Like Howley absolutely was deserving. That is long overdue.
It's
the way though, Ron, Klecko and Riley leapt over guys like Kuchenberg, leapt over guys like Gradishar. And you would
also. So let's try to figure out why that is. Like, clearly,
I can tell you the reason why. First off,
for the wrong reasons.
Well, no, let me explain. You see, when it comes to Joe Klecko, I can think of literally one reason that stands up behind everyone else. Gary Myers. Gary Myers, for many years, has been someone that's been pushing and persisting like absolutely crazy to get Joe Klecko in the Hall of Fame. And, as someone who's from New York, every single person that's alive absolutely loves Joe Klecko and wants to see him get in because of how important his versatility was. And then when you compare it to Ken Riley, that's someone that the other group was also really pushed for because how important he was in terms of, you have all these other testimonials, similar to like how Joe DeLamielleure and John Hanna and Anthony Munoz were for someone like Joe Klecko. You saw the same thing where James Lofton and John Stallworth and Charlie Joyner and other people there were mentioning how he was the toughest they were ever against. And so one could say, how come you don't get the voices of, people that played there? Well, in both cases, these are situations where it's not just, the pure all pros and the stats. It's also the legends of the game saying that they were the toughest they were against. So in many ways, you can make a really good case that, Klecko and Riley, yes, they may not have the all pros as others, but their impact on the game was felt through those legends. And
well, if it was felt through those legends, then when they were actually voting for the Pro Bowls, and I think, Jack, you would call it like the Players All Pro Awards, they would have gotten more of them. You know, like these retrospective testimonials 35, 40 years ago, like now we've got a senior committee that's acting more like fanboys than they are like protectors of the game and protectors of history and like honoring the game and the history. Because you also mentioned the Gary Myers. There's no doubt, like you even look at Everson Walls got into the final 12 over somebody like, let's say, a Lester Hayes. Clearly he has some sway there. So are we
He
saying
definitely has sway.
for a committee, one person has that much sway? Is that what it's supposed to be about?
You're always going to have those people that are like, the Lions of the room and the Cubs of the room. You're always going to have those that stand up a little bit more for their guy. Doesn't matter the situation you're in, Jeff. You're always going to have that. In the case of here, you had Myers that was very huge for Klecko, and you had Hobson and probably a couple others. Like Gosselin was also a massive Riley supporter as well. Like you have all these people that were very huge for both. They were very close last time. And, here they are. And, in a way, in order to try to make the process for the better, you have to try to address those two. And then who do we go? And it's Howley.
No, to address the process, you put in a Gradishar over one of those two.
Yeah, well, here's a question though.
That's qualified candidates, period.
Here's a
Like,
question though.
it's not an either or proposition here.
What do you got, Evan?
I was wondering because is Howley the reason Gradishar is not in?
He shouldn't be.
No,
That's a good question.
He isn't.
Why not?
Here's why. Like I said, Klecko and Riley were the runners up the last 2 years, and it was two completely different committees of 5, except for maybe one person. And so that's what they were wrestling with, was like, well, we have all these other 12 people, but hey, these two guys in 2021, 2022, we were this close, within like one vote from putting them in. So now we're just going to throw them aside and look at other people. I think that was their conflict.
All right. So those
that's why I understand.
So those two spots are taken, Ron. I'm
Right.
going with you on that. But if they are looking at positional, because we have 3 defensive players, which is first of all interesting.
Right.
We have one from each level of the defense, right? So is it even if what you said with the putting the one in on each side is easy, but if we have Howley and Gradishar playing the same position, even if the other thing didn't exist, is there a possibility that they're just not putting 2 linebackers in?
No, they didn't play the same position. The one played outside, the other played middle linebacker.
Right, they're playing on the same
linebacker.
level.
Right. Okay, but here's another thing, and this is something that I'm very huge on, and all of you who've seen me on a podcast know this. If you have to pick between 2, and I mean, obviously I'm a Randy Gradishar guy, look at my background, right? But Chuck Howley's 86 years old, and I understand he's not in very good health. I mean, I have seen some articles, 6 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pro, 12-year career, Super Bowl MVP on a losing team. That's a Hall of Famer to me.
Yep.
I don't think anyone's arguing Chuck Howley.
Right. No. But here's the thing.
It shouldn't have to have been either or.
But I agree. But if you're going to pick the guy who's been out there for 45 years versus the guy who's been out there for 35 years, however ridiculous that sounds, I would get the guy in. We've seen too many posthumous inductions in the last few years. Cliff Branch just now, and Stabler. I mean, just let them enjoy this honor while they're alive, and that's one of the problems of the backlog. But if I were voting between the two, I mean, ethically, I would go Howley over Gradishar, only for that, if there's like one slot.
But I would go Gradishar over Riley then if we're going to play that.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying
Gradishar is still alive. I don't mean that disrespectfully, because just because a guy's dead doesn't mean they shouldn't go into the Hall of Fame. What I'm saying,
no, I agree.
It shouldn't have had to have been. Well, Howley's the linebacker, and we got to get these other 2 guys in. Again, that speaks to a fundamental broken process. These 2 guys leapt over other guys that were 4-time, 6-time, 8-time finalists. Like that, it's just wrong. That's not how this process should work. It should be best candidate with the best resumes.
Right, but now that you have 12.
I think also too, if I could, just going back to the whole hockey thing, and just Pat Burns. And I think, Ron, you and I talked about that. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't, I don't know. But Pat Burns should have been a Hockey Hall of Fame. They knew he was dying. They didn't induct him until he was dead 2 years later. a lot of the people who run this stuff or sort of like run that, they want to wait. They don't want to be told what they should do.
Mhm.
If that makes any weird sense.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in hockey. We saw that with Ron Santo in baseball,
Mhm.
you know, to another degree.
Mhm.
Are we like, and I'm so happy, I mean, for Howley, I'm a big Howley guy, even I really am. And, you know, to Ron's point, and Ron, like you watched that with Pat Bowen, who finally got
Yes.
in, but he wasn't in a mental state because it was 1 year too late.
No, he was dead.
He was
Yeah.
dead. Okay, sorry, I got
Oh,
that.
well, he
He
was
died
elected.
in
He was alive.
between-
He was dead
No.
before the presentation.
Right.
Oh,
No,
okay,
no. He was dead when it was announced. Okay. But
Because they just had to get Jerry Jones in first.
well, but let me just, I can tell you what happened there. Okay.
Yeah, please.
20, again, you're talking about a 9-member committee with 5 people meeting, different 5 people pretty much every other year. Jerry Jones and his people, my understanding is they did, you know, Jerry Jones does it big. Okay. And their people really kind of campaigned for him and let it be known he wanted to go in, and he got selected along with Paul Tagliabue. And the general voters like said, hell no, right? And so they actually had 1 slot that year instead of the 2. And then the next year, the other committee said, well, we put in DeBartolo and Jerry. Oh, we can't put in another owner. It's going to look really bad. So they went with Bobby Beathard, and they had the whole deal lined up. And then 2019, like in 2018, they got Mr. B kind of lined up for the Hall of Fame.
With Gil Brandt, don't forget.
Right, with Gil Brandt.
What, and I guess here's the thing though, Kirk, you brought up the thing about they don't like to be told what to do, but they clearly like to be significantly swayed and influenced by testimonials and like fan pushes.
Sure.
Not overtly directly, but they are getting influenced by it. mean,
Absolutely,
An
yeah.
apples to apples, like career comparison, like it's even
Well,
surprising.
right, but I mean, it's, and again, I'm just putting it from a hockey point of view.
Yeah.
I remember all the stuff with Pat Burns. It's like, okay, you know he's dying. You know he's got the Hall of Fame candidacy. So you're not going to put him. And if I remember correctly, and Ron, jump in here. I'm trying to remember what he had. I think it was cancer. Was it not? So it wasn't.
I believe so. I believe
Yeah.
so.
So it wasn't a mental thing like it was with Pat Bowen. So, or with Chuck Elliott. We don't know what stage he's in. And
Santo analogy was good though, because it did feel like that. They literally waited until he kicked the bucket and they said, yeah, finally go ahead and put him in because now we feel like dicks.
because that's how it felt to me with
Mhm.
Pat Burns. I mean, again, but I could be wrong. And again, the whole thing with Ron Santo in baseball, it just felt like even Jerry Kramer to a lesser degree, even though he's still alive, but it's like they made him pay penance for reasons that we can't figure out.
He wrote a book and they didn't like it. That's the reason
Yeah.
why.
Well, that's
Art
Now,
McNally.
here's the
too.
question about Klecko. Like Brian brought up Klecko a little earlier, talking about the resume. And here's the thing that I struggle with Klecko. Like I put these guys, the 12 finalists, into tiers. And to me, Klecko was like a someday, but ain't right now kind of guy. And one of the things I had trouble with was that I felt for like a period of time in the 80s that Gastineau was the better player. Gastineau was the more impactful player. And I know Gastineau comes with a whole different set of baggage, but he's never going to sniff the Hall of Fame. But if you technically look at the resume, you say this is a guy that led the league in sacks twice. You know, he had the single season record
Mhm.
long time, did it in a major media market, had more Pro Bowls, more first team all pros than Klecko did. And it's like this kind of thing of, well, the versatility, he was, you know, at least second team all pro technically at 3 different positions. Yeah, that's nice and all. But was Gastineau more dominant for his role and what he did? A little rated perhaps even as a run defender, but like so dominant as an edge rusher. Like, I'm sorry, but you would think about some of those Jets teams in the 80s. You have to envision like they were worried about Gastineau. Gastineau was the game wrecker. He was the difference maker. Klecko was really good, but Gastineau was the juice. He was the it factor. And it's like, to me, it's odd that Klecko's about to get in and Gastineau probably never sniffed this opportunity. Like, I struggle to reconcile that a little.
I think you're wrong in terms of Gastineau never making it. I think eventually, like when Gastineau eventually croaks, I definitely could see a bit of a push. And Jets fans are already starting to do that right now a little bit.
Gastineau?
A little bit. I mean, not as much as like how it was for Klecko, but you're seeing a little bit of it. And I've spoken to a lot of my friends that are Jets fans. But to your point, Jeff, you may say that, but you know, everyone I know that follows the Jets says it's always been Klecko as in terms of the more, you know, dominant one because of how versatile he was.
I always thought, in
But
my
the
opinion,
players and
and I grew
coaches
up-
didn't agree.
Sorry, Dave, what were you saying?
growing up a fan in the 80s, when I came upon it was Gastineau. And part of it probably was at that time, media hype. He was the pretty boy, I think, dating, supermodels and all kinds of other.
Yeah, how'd that work out with Bridget Nielsen?
Yeah. But the eye test told me that Gastineau was the more of the disruptor, game to game. It was the guy you had to plan against. But our game can be wrecked by Gastineau more than Klecko, as an example. But both good players. But to Jeff's point, I think there's some validity to it, and Vinny certainly not not being in New York. And there's a lot of times when you're in a market, you can say, well, everybody thinks this guy was better because they saw him on TV more, but this other more nondescript, less highlights type guy was the factor. And so I get that. And so I'm not going to discredit Klecko's candidacy, but I think there's something to it that suddenly Klecko is just thrust to the top. And Gastineau, there's not much momentum, and maybe 10 years from now will be a different conversation.
Whereas
Let me ask you a
Hollywood.
question.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Let me ask you a question. Why have a senior pool?
To make up for
What else do you
mistakes that
want?
should have happened
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Oh, no,
this
because
is
then, but
this
then
is a
you
serious
have
question. I
building.
want to know what I want to know what people's answers are. What is the
Then why-
purpose? What is the function of a senior pool?
At
Function
this
of a
point,
senior
I don't
pool.
know, because
You know,
can Riley get through
when I
and
think about-
it
when I
pushes
think
older
about-
guys back. Hold on.
Let
Because what
Ryan
I'm
go.
saying is we sit there and now we push a Ken Riley and like, oh, that's great. What about all the other people's?
No, but that's not the answer. No, but that's
It
not
is
an
the
answer to the
Hold on,
question.
let me
Jeff.
answer the question.
Simplify.
I'm saying I don't see the point in the committee if it's not going to work right. It's not working right. So what's the
Of course, that's like saying I don't think I should drive this car if it doesn't have wheels. What is the purpose of a senior pool?
Ryan had something to say.
Simple. Be simple.
I think it's mainly getting your boards in. But it's basically getting your boards in, because I think, and the reason why I say that is because I think about the Veterans Committee and with the Baseball Hall of Fame. A lot of those guys, some of those guys, for example, Charlie Gehringer, who played for the Detroit Tigers, he got some of his boards, the guys that he played with in Detroit. Some of his boards ended up being in the Hall of Fame due to him being on the Veterans Committee. So a guy like a James Lofton, who got all these stories about Ken Riley and stuff, they're gonna do everything in their power to get their boards in. It's really just that. It's really just them being fanboys. It's not talking about the history of the game. It's them being fanboys. That's really what it is.
Okay, so that's one. Thank you very much. That's one definitive answer. Does anyone have a different definitive answer? What is the purpose of a senior pool? In other words, you did your 20 years.
My opinion of a senior
20 years, you didn't get in. That could be it.
to
I'm asking.
rectify previous mistakes?
Say it again.
To rectify previous mistakes.
Okay, so that would obviously be another big category. What do other people think?
To find some people that fell through the cracks. And sometimes people look at their career a little bit differently years from now. That's just also how it happens. Like that's just gonna happen with a lot of people's careers. Like for basketball, people probably didn't look at Jack Sikma in the same ways they did back then, but now, as his play style has been much more comparable to that of today, he was seen as somewhat pioneering. So that's why he eventually made it, later on. That's one idea in my mind. That's at least from what I've heard. But like for here, people look at other careers. Maybe they have a different viewpoint. That's just another thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Pro
Jack-
bias, what?
Jack's sick.
Hey,
man.
no, Jack, I have one too. It's also to correct any mistakes that may have been, not mistakes, but there may have been corrections in the criteria process, such as when Kenny easily made it in 2017, the short career aspect was no longer an impediment, like for Tony Pizzelli, and also as you saw with Sterling Sharp making the top 6 this year.
I mean,
Yeah.
Jack, to answer your question, my sarcastic answer is to give Vinny something to talk about for the next 40 years.
Oh, that's contributors.
That's contributors. I apologize. But I mean, we
He
have
has his own
situations.
show on Not Hall of Fame Network. I just want to point that out.
But we have situations. I always go back to the 2002 Hall of Fame class here, where I'm sorry, 2002. It's 2005, where they elected 4 quarterbacks, right? And on that list, so they elected Marino and Young, no questions on there. But on the rest of the people underneath who were not elected, 13 of them are now in. So we've had to go through a process to fix the failings of people in the room at that point. And because, like we said, because they put 2 modern candidates in 2005 after putting 3 in 2004, 1976, they put 2 in of the senior candidates and of the other folks. All of them are in except for Charlie Connerly and Clark Shaughnessy at this point. And we've just had to go back and back and back because the voting blocks are imperfect. And there are whatever goes on in that room on that day changes, right? I mean, we found this out in this last thing. How many of us really thought when we saw the people who were nominated last year that we're going to see Bryant Young get into the hall out of that group, right?
Unless you're John Turney, I don't think you were thinking about that.
Right. But going back to what you said earlier, Vinny, there were so many, what's the word I'm looking for? Testimonies from people who played
Testimonials, yeah.
Testimonial, that's what I'm looking for. It's been a long week. I've taught 15 people how to do my job over the last week for 8 hours a day. So I apologize.
That's how good Evan is. It takes 15 people to replace him, jokers.
Yes, about. But like it was those testimonials is honestly what got Bryant Young in, probably over some of these other folks who we all considered. I mean, we went through this process, so we all considered to be better candidates. So that more than anything, I think, Jack, is, and I guess it's a combination of what Ron said and what Vinny said, but just to try and deal with the politics in the room at the time that no longer exist.
Well, but let's look at our own process.
So
I mean,
what I'll
somebody-
say to that,
Yeah,
what I'll
sorry,
say
go
to
ahead.
I'll say to that is, I think it should work more the way that Evan described it, and I certainly would have a concern that it's temporarily working more the way that Ryan described it. And that's a feel to it, but that is how it seems. Because the question is, and the question I was asking, what is that purpose? I think that there are different areas to look at where you say, all right, we need to correct this mistake. But I think you're much, much safer and should err on the side of fixing a past mistake with regards to how a process worked, i.e., oh, Kenny Weasley would have already been in. We don't care about short things now. We used to care about it, but we don't anymore. That kind of thing where you're applying a modern standard of evaluation to something that would have previously shortchanged something. I think that's a perfectly good use of a reevaluation time. What I would be concerned about is that if you spent more of your time reevaluating your complete understanding of the player himself and suggesting maybe the thing we saw was actually this complete other thing as to move someone up ahead. I would rather look at what were the errors in process that led to someone being an 8-time finalist and left out versus, hey, did we, accidentally not realize Ken Riley was one of the 4 greatest corners of all time? Really changing your view of the player versus giving someone the benefit of the doubt because of the process. That's where I'd like to see the attention.
So Jack, coming out of that, as you think about that, does that mean the way you envision it is Bob Kuchenberg as an 8-time finalist, since you brought up his name? you feel like he should have been somebody at the front of the queue, like this is whatever the politics or the decisions, whatever led to him not getting them before, like this is what the senior committee should be doing, not the.
Yeah, I just think that you have to, at a certain degree, you have to find a way to keep things even. Otherwise, you can't evaluate anybody if you're on these days. And that's what I was talking about with the different voting bodies and just kind of declaring that this person won Defensive Player of the Year, or this person won this award because they UPI or NEI or whatever. I think you have to be careful with that. And I think to a certain degree that this is an opportunity to get something right that you feel like, you know what, we got this wrong. But the thing that you got wrong has to be the way you were going about it, and not just we totally didn't understand this player to the tune of bringing him that far up. I think you have to. I think you have to simplify a little bit and just say, you know, let's just look at like Pro Bowls when they mattered, plus all pro awards that you received, you know, what your team's ranking was if you were offense or defense, and how many times were you already a semifinalist or a finalist in the voting. And you know, you've got like literally hundreds of players who could qualify and have a great senior case, and who, the more we all talk about them and get around, like the more you start to feel like, oh, I'm really passionate about this guy or this guy. And it happens in modern too. I mean, I think I'm not alone in saying Tom Hall changed the whole way I saw Tom Naylor. So that's kind of cool. And we talk about all these players, so there's a lot of them, but
and you changed the way I saw Peanut Tillman, Jack. So
well, and Ken Riley changes the way too now. Like, if we're going to just focus on one thing, like, oh my God, there's the man, the myth, the living legend.
There's Bill.
Look at this guy. He is ready to goodness tonight.
Bill, you're an hour late.
Hey, Bill.
Unfortunately, a very good friend of mine lost his father, and so I was at a funeral
I'm sorry to
earlier.
hear that.
But I'm here now.
Yeah, I was just saying, Jack, like to me, when I think of a queue, even like a call center or something, is you have like 150 people in the queue, unless something fundamentally changes in front of you and you're like, you shouldn't jump 149 other people just because of some random factor. Like, there has to be some process in place. There has to be some methodology. Right. And what I think you're hitting on, you and I might be aligned on, is the Kuchenbergs, the Gradishars, the so on and so forth. These guys that were very close, multiple. Roger Craig couldn't even sniff the top 12, but what was he, a 10-time semifinalist?
10-time semifinalist.
Yeah,
and Riley and Klecko. Yeah, Riley and Klecko never were. Like, there's something really wrong.
Okay, I want to make a point. So
yeah, sorry.
Is there something to a guy is just so close to the Hall of Fame that he's just a semifinalist every time, but he's not a Hall of Famer, and it's okay that somebody else is reevaluated? So a baseball guy, Alan Trammell, Jack Morris, maybe even Tim Raines, like these are really close guys. Is the intent, as to a great point and a great question asked, do we just like, okay, just move the bar a little bit and just kind of shift some guys in?
But that's the thing. You went through 20 years.
Did something change about Jack Morris that was different after he was passed over 15 years, or was the good old boy thing? Or was, you know,
Jim,
I think the point is, and I'm agreeing with most people that you look at it, should a career be reevaluated? And so I'm just saying, like a Bob Kuchenberg, maybe he's not a Hall of Famer just because he's close and kind of close for several years in a row doesn't automatically mean that somebody else.
I understand what you're saying.
But why would Clark and Riley be then?
No, I'm not saying those two guys are those guys. I'm not saying at all those two guys are those guys.
No, he's saying, is it possible that that's literally your peak and you hit it consistently? People feel strongly enough about you being here, but you're not here. I think that's totally fair. I just looked at it and said, you have to first address process corrections, and you can't just rewrite the history of a player. And, you know, I mean, I say this knowing I talk about Steve McMichael, or knowing that I talk about Charles Tillman. I think when you watch people, it's going to be natural to kind of do some of that. I also think, though, you have to kind of look at your vote at the end, because I don't know, do we get more in the weeds than voters get? What do we think?
I would definitely say I would say that we definitely get way further in the weeds, even like going further into history stuff. I mean, hell, the committee only had one pre 1960s guy, and like, you know, outside of me, I don't know how many people were really pumping the drum for Cecil Isbell.
All right.
Well,
all right, so
but why is it a senior committee if you don't actually have that representation?
Yeah, exactly. I
You got to push Ken Riley.
I wouldn't just, you know, I will say this when it comes down to it. I do think that your point, Dave, that's also a big reason why, you know, Coryell has been a finalist so many times and still has, you know, yet to break through that. It's also for a very long time, that was also the case for Lynn Swan. He was a finalist for a record 14 times before he finally made it in. But at that point, they finally said, you know what, let's just finally put him in. And, you know, same thing with Jerry Kramer, and, you know, same thing, you know, going on right now for Bob Kuchenberg. I think eventually, you know, you're going to get Kuchenberg, you're going to get Coryell, you're going to get Shaughnessy, and I even think eventually Charlie Connerly, if you ever do mention the number of finalists, maybe he'll get another shot. But yeah, that's how I personally see it. But I would say, like, you know, I would still, you know, I still have no issue with these finalists, because.
But let's go back to, we have our three people who have gotten through it, the three who we think are going to go through it, three finalists.
they're gonna go for it.
I agree with you, but let's look at the three.
Let's just say they're going to go for it.
The three who were sort of like 4, 5, and 6. Gradishar. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the other two.
Morgan Sharp.
All right, thank you. All right, so we've seen the queue alter. I mean, like, Evan, you and I, we've talked about how we would have thought that Roger Craig would have at least been a top 12 based on the fact that he was a 2020 guy. How does the queue change?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things when you look at the queue from 2020, a whole bunch of, like, what happened to Lavi Dillwig? Like, he's just evaporated.
Oh, that's still a sore spot.
Right, I understand, but like, if you look, so the people left over from the 2020 class,
But his case got worse.
No.
Sorry.
So, but it's Roger Craig, Laverne Dillwig, Ox Emerson, Gradishar, we're still talking about, Isbell, we're still talking about, Vern Llewellyn, Tommy Nobis, who is still on the list, and Al Wister are still left. Drew Pearson's already in, right? But like, the vast majority of those guys have evaporated. Like, they were there in 2020 and now they're not.
The only ones that even made it to a finalist was Isbell, Nobis, and Gradishar. And Gradishar was the only one that made it to the final 6. And he got cut. You have Howley, who was never a finalist, Klecko, who was never a finalist, and Riley, never a finalist, all made it through. Now, I could maybe also look at it this way. Because I still think a lot of the Riker Senior Committee had sour grapes that they didn't have a chance to vote on the, you know, Centennial class. As a result, potentially they could be saying, hey, I'm going to just push through my guys that weren't on there. So as a result, yeah, you know, you get an Isbell, a Gradishar, and a Nobis. People like, you know, a Dillwig or a Craig miss out in the semifinals, and then someone like Wistard or Emerson don't even make it as a semifinalist. I think that's also a big reason too.
Hey, Ryan, you got caught off earlier. Was there something you were gonna say? I'm sorry, Jack.
No, I'm just listening. You know, it's always good to listen. Like, some of the smartest people in the world, they listen to people. So it's just like me soaking in everything. But I do think, going back to everything, I'm just listening to what you all are saying. And one of the things that y'all been talking about, we talk about this queue all the time. And I know one of y'all asked me a question: do I think, is it important to focus on the people at the front of the queue, or do we focus on the backlog? And I think I also thought about the whole thing with Chuck Howley, who is not in good health. And I thought about Eddie Sutton with the Basketball Hall of Fame. Eddie Sutton, by the time before he died, he lost his ability to speak in 2018. He didn't get inducted until April of 2020, and he died a month later. And I'm like, this guy should have been in the Hall of Fame in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Earlier, while he was able to enjoy it, the guy took 4 schools to the NCAA tournament. He took 2 to the Final Four. He won everywhere he went, and they did not. And people like there's good reasons, and I agree with that. But I also think at the end of the day, I fear the same shit was going to happen to not Eddie Sutton, but Bob Huggins, who is now getting in. And you're talking to a guy that hated Bob Huggins when he was at Cincinnati. I hated the Bearcats growing up because they used to beat my Memphis Tigers all the time. And I say, look, he needs to get in the Hall of Fame while he's alive. Let him enjoy it. And he was able to get in this year. So, I do agree that some people will say Eddie Sutton didn't get in for the right reasons when he was able to enjoy it. But I also think that this backlog in the queue, it's very important. And you gotta and the senior, as I said earlier, the senior committee is really about fanboys. I mean, it's not about the history of the game. It's about fanboys. Like, you're gonna have those guys that are fanboys of Ken Riley. You have those guys that are fanboys of Joe Klecko, etc. So that's all I got to say.
Are there any actual historians on the senior committee? I can't have asked this before.
No.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like we talk about the process? Like, if the hall said, well, we don't need any historians, well, maybe they're not the best judge of that, frankly. You're not capturing all of the eras of the senior committee process, clearly.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, like, the media, to me, to your point, Ryan, I think it's a very good one, is they're acting, it feels like, more like fanboys and less like stewards of the history of the game and the players and so forth. And like, maybe there would be a benefit to having some historian presence there to cut some of the testimonial noise and fanboy stuff.
You gotta have some historians on that. You gotta have some historians. I mean, there are so many great historians that know about the game. It's like, for example, I'm a Saints fan. Someone would say, "Oh, Marquise Colston should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame." I'm like, no, he shouldn't. How many Pro Bowls?
Whoa, who said that?
No. I'm just saying
This happens.
It happens.
Listen, Marquise Colston is a Hofstra graduate. He's the best one to come out of Hofstra. But you're never going to see me.
I didn't mean to take it on this thing.
You're never going to see me push for a case of someone for him when you have like Pat Swilling there. Like,
I'm gonna push for Pat Swilling. I'm gonna push for Pat Swilling because he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But what I'm saying is, someone will say, "Oh yeah, Marquise Colston, dude, he's not a Hall of Fame. How many All Pros did he make? How many Pro Bowls did he make?" Okay, his only thing is, oh yeah, he had He has the most touchdown catches in Saints history, most touchdowns scored in Saints history. He's in the New Orleans Saints Hall of Fame. That's about it. He didn't make any All Pros. He didn't make any Pro Bowls. To me, he's a New Orleans Saints Hall of Famer.
That's right.
Jack, you did a great thread today on Pat Swilling.
Pat Swilling has a better case for the Hall of Fame. Has an unbelievable case, and here's what I'm saying about this: five-time Pro Bowler, 2-time second team All Pro, 2-time first team All Pro, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, NFL sacks leader. He checks off the balance. He checks off all the boxes for my criteria in terms of.
But what do you for the committee though? Go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
No, I'm all in for Pat Swilling.
I was just saying though, to the point though, like the fanboy stuff, like when you look at Pat Swilling, he's probably one that's kind of gotten lost in the sauce of the process of the modern committee. But yeah, like certainly feels like he's underrated, but there's actually like some teeth there to the resume. But like this whole process piece, like if there's no historians, like I'm sorry, but some of these writers, like I've seen some of them on Twitter. I'm not that impressed with their understanding of the history and the knowledge of the damn game.
Jeff, did
yeah.
Did you see the article? It was like a 3-part article. 5 or 6 historians picked draft their 35. Must have been 5, and they did round of 7, maybe.
Yep.
Maybe it was that.
Yeah, he saw it, I think.
We were pulling that up, and as soon as we were looking at that, we were all making faces and looking sideways on some stuff. I mean, the historians. the historians, and I say this as a historian, can get too historian.
Yeah, and I don't disagree, but there's some balance in the process, perhaps.
Some.
Yeah,
I would say another
they're not
thing
just
that I've
yelling.
been thinking about over the last few days, and it ties into the kind of what is the purpose of the senior committee, and certainly one of the purposes is make sure people see this while they're alive. I think they should just elect this year the next 3 classes, announce all 3. You get inducted over the 3 years. They're not all inducted at the same time, but it's just announced. And then
Start over.
people who are in their 80s don't want to go through this every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's unnerving.
Like,
It's really
yeah,
unhinging to them.
It changes the spotlight on you. It changes what's happening in your home, where a lot of people are getting care in the home. It changes everything's going on for a month of the year, maybe a little bit more. So
That's a
yeah,
great.
everybody
Imagine
would be
if
able
they
to.
announced,
Because
imagine if they announced Kuchenberg,
they-
Sharp, and Gradishar in
They
24.
announced the 4 through 6.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
And
to-
everybody agrees that's a good class.
Absolutely.
So nothing's fucking changing. Sterling Sharp's not going to catch another pass between now and next year. Just like say that they're in, and you can induct them the following year.
Why
Well,
wait at that point? Just let's.
yeah,
That's right. Like, why wait? I mean, because
but
they're not going to change it. But I'd even say, like, why did small on once and then circle back in 3 years and do it 9?
this will
One
get
thing
me
I
killed
want to
in
bring up,
Denver.
if I could, just I'm looking at our group here. So like Evan and I, when we started this some time ago, and we said we're going to put together people. Some people have come in later than others. One thing I really enjoy about our process is, and I'm hoping anyone who's watching this and or listening and wants to be part of this, we want to keep evolving and getting different points of view. And I've got a pretty good idea where some of you are coming from. I can evolve. I think, although he's not here, Tom Hall, your good friend, Ron, he's done such a great job swinging a lot of us on Tom Nolan, for example. I want to hear different points of view. I want to hear a bunch of stuff. So the reason why I bring this up, is it something that would be beneficial for the Pro Football Hall of Fame to have term limits?
Of course.
Yes.
It's beneficial
No.
for every organization to have term limits.
That'd be good.
Yes.
I wish Congress had that.
That's right.
No
Like-
Congress,
politics.
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
No.
people who vote on the Pope, yes, everybody.
Because you need to freshen it up. Like, that's part of it.
Except for Evan and I, we're grandfathered in for this. But anyway.
But
Yeah,
you
but
Get rid of the
it's
rest of
tough.
us.
continuous improvement. You've got to continue
It's-
to like evolve and change and grow.
Yeah.
You can't do that with always the same eyeballs, the same faces, the same thoughts, the same ideas.
Right.
Well, the grass is always greener till you get to the other side.
Really?
Especially with the older Hall of Famer, potential Hall of Famers, the super seniors, you do need some of the older selectors who've seen those guys play or who know people who've seen those guys play. I still harken back to like what Jack said, with the next class, potentially. Let's just give this seniors committee the benefit of the doubt until next year, because all 12 of them will be back in that format. They already have 3 to 6 or whatever that have a pecking order. And let's just, I trust them. I trust in them until Randy doesn't make it, right? But but I'm just saying
Then we riot.
they had a tough situation with 2 finalists from 2 different years with 2 different committee compositions. They got Howley in with those other 2, whether you like it or not. And I'm optimistic towards it. And if it works, it's something Jim Porter can run with to the board and say,
No.
hey, let's continue this some more.
No, I see what
I-
you're saying. You're saying it already looks a year out so good that let's just pause, give them the benefit out that they're going to
Give them the benefit of the doubt.
carry through on
because-
that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because you got 3 that are stellar for potentially next year. And even if only 2 of them make it, and maybe a super senior with them or something like that, it's not just, okay, this guy was a runner-up 2 years ago because 3 of us voted for him.
But then why do you even have to have the process? Like, if it was just going to be, I think to Jack's point earlier, like if it's just going to be Kuchenberg, Sharp, Gradishar next year, then why are they coming back and even talking about it again? Like if they're just gonna stick to those three, what's the point?
I mean,
Well, what are the 7, 8, 9?
let's be honest, it's probably not going to be Kuchenberg, Sharp, and Gradishar next year.
Why not?
Something's going to
Probably
change.
not.
Two of those three, I bet make it, and one of them
It
somehow
feels
falls out.
too clean. Like that's what it feels like right now. It feels too clean.
Yeah.
Right.
As a group, we got very close to
I
it.
mean, is
Yeah,
is,
quite a bit.
is Sharp too young for some of these guys, and they end up going with somebody from a long time ago,
Matter.
Lavi Dilweg out of nowhere comes back
Yay.
on, or something like
Perfect
that. You
point.
never know. I said that for you, Vinny.
Yay.
Should we look at the 6 who did not get to the top?
Yes, I really do think we should, because
That's
for all we know, any one of these 6 could be, one of the 3 they choose next year. And for all we know, any one of them could also end up missing out and being semifinalists again. I'm convinced that all of the 9, including the 3 that just missed it, will all be at the very least semifinalists again. I'm pretty confident in that.
All right, so let's look at the ones, and thanks, Jack, for putting that through here.
I'm missing one though.
It was Ken Anderson. How dare you?
I'm-
Oh, you got Ken Anderson.
Oh, he's got Ken Anderson.
Oh, yeah, we have 2 Andersons. Anderson. All right, so
You
we got
just
Tommy
spelled
Novus,
Anderson.
Tommy
Isbell?
Novus,
It's
Maxie
Isbell
Bond,
and
Ken
Novus.
Anderson, Everson
It's
Wall.
Isbell.
Oh, Isbell is the other.
How
one.
could you
Yeah,
forget
okay.
Cecil Isbell?
Oh, how could
This is
I?
even thinking
Indeed.
about Lavi Dilweg.
That
Those-
makes sense.
Those 5
Misspelled
NFL
Matthews.
seasons.
Out of
made
those
such an
6
impression on me.
guys, who could sort of like make a case, or who would
Super-
make a case out of those 6?
Everson
Super
Wall,
senior.
because Gary Myers is there.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
Laugh if you want.
If you want to push a super senior, I'm here going to be pounding the table for Isbell until I lose my breath.
Yep.
Not you.
Yeah, actually, that's not. Actually, that is true. I did go on 7 straight minutes on a podcast, introducing myself.
Maxie Bond had a lot of that sound like a lot of momentum. And again, he's another one who's I think 84 years old.
Yeah, he's getting up there in age.
So
I
is
can
Nico
honestly.
too, right?
Okay, so here's a Bengals question, guys. Let's say Riley gets the thumbs up, which we all think he will. Does Ken Anderson get hurt from this?
No,
yeah.
I don't. I don't.
Bengals guilt's over then, right?
Well, because Riley got put in over him, and Anderson's the one that was a league MVP, played a premier position,
Yeah.
like the best quarterback not in a lot of respects.
Mhm.
So I might counter and say, I think it might actually hurt him a little bit, unless they go with
That's what I said. Like, does it hurt him?
Well, I can give a great example. 2010, the Broncos were kind of throwing a bone and said, okay, you have no one besides John Elway, who played most of your career with Denver, in. Hey, we'll give you someone. And it was like, you guys pick between Floyd Little and Randy Gradishar. And Floyd Little was the franchise, finished 7th in rushing all time when he retired. Of course, that number surpassed, but he meant so much to the franchise. And a lot of the selectors said, okay, well, Gradishar was the better player. So, well, he can wait till the end of hell, basically, unfortunately. And that's why he kind of got punted down.
and 14 years later, it might be the earliest he could get in after.
Yes. Yeah.
So like,
Well, there were some other things too, where he had a former coach of his really wanted to show the impact that he had. And you know how the stats weren't real robust. And so the guy went and looked at every game tape, and his stat totals went up by like 50%. And that rubbed some of the selectors the wrong way. And it's not fair to like a Tommy Nobis or Chuck Howley or, other players, hey, yeah, Randy Gradishar just got 700 more tackles. I don't doubt that he made those tackles. It's just, it wasn't apples to apples. And like Dr. Z and some of the selectors were like, hey, what's going on here? And his coach is one of the most honest, nice guys, Joe Collier, ever. But it was just, there are a lot of factors with Randy, and now they're starting to come around on him.
and does Anderson get hurt by the fact that you have, I think, Jack, you've been really good about calling out like how easy the path typically is for quarterbacks. Like it's the first ballot, or maybe if you're Kurt Warner, you wait a couple. So if you had to wait this long to get in, there's some reason that you haven't, and maybe people will justify, to Dave's point earlier, that maybe you're only ever a finalist. And he didn't even crack the top 6 here, which to me feels odd. Like his teammate, who wasn't even corner on his team makes it to the top final three, the guy that was the MVP of the league in 81 and multiple time Pro Bowler at the marquee position in the sport can't even crack the top six. I think it does hurt him.
Yeah, hey Vinny, you were on that Bengals call where Clark Judge was talking about Kenny Anderson, and he mentioned that Kenny had kind of like a Kurt Warner, like a few years of excellence and then a gap and then some more excellence. How did you read that?
First, the way I personally read it is, going on the Bengals, podcast, Bengals Jim, great guy, Tom, great guy, everyone there, wonderful, wonderful dude. And like, I can't wait to see him next year. They absolutely deserve it. They had an incredible push, and I'd be lying if I said I haven't played a bit of a role in that, but that's a whole nother thing. I have no regrets. But as for, seeing the way that they also view it too is like, they kind of view it as like a stock almost. The stock for Riley was getting higher and higher and higher. With Anderson, the reason as to why he got bogged down a little bit is actually partially because Isbell was also there too. And there was actually getting more momentum for Isbell because he was the only quarterback on any all-decade team that's not in the Hall of Fame. And some of them did want to have some pre-1960s, and he was the only one there. And they just kind of went with Riley in that case because they sort of got canceled out. Now granted, Everson Walls was also there as a cornerback, so Eddie Metter there as a safety, but Riley was the one that they went. And as for him being more of a Kurt Warner, the way that also a lot of people kind of viewed it was like he had some really, really outstanding years, but also some years where he wasn't as good. So I think they also put that into the equation as well.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, we brought up Floyd Little with the Broncos. I mean, granted, it's a different situation, but Floyd Little was the second Bronco, and then Shan Sharp was the third the very next year, right? So I don't know if now we have a second Bengal in is really going to make that much of a difference when it comes to things like this. I mean, two Bengals is still probably not enough for the history of that franchise, unless you think that Willie Anderson's getting in next year, which I don't. I think he'll be a finalist, but I don't think he's getting in. That's the third Bengal anyway. So at some point we're going to think it's getting in. We're thinking he's getting in over the next 2-3 years anyway. I don't see how Riley really hurts him this coming into next year, at least on that front.
Yeah, in seniors it's just limited, and modern it's a little bit not easier, but if they're really truly elite, then they get in. In seniors, you have so many guys that are like very, very close.
Doesn't take much, to your point, Ron. I think like one little thing, and it could be there's a little less passion to put in another Bengals so quickly, because it's like, we gave you Riley. That was Bengals fans. For some reason, you pivoted. This is the guy that you wanted over Anderson. You got it. And now there could be like we're concerned about Anderson.
Yeah, and my geographic plug the other day.
Actually, Ron, tell everyone about that if you can.
Okay. Well, and again, I'm not trying to pick on the selectors. Like I told you what I thought of the Tuesday selections. I think I understand how it went down, and I think it was a good class based on that. But the 2 years centennial, 10 seniors, right? And then also on Tuesday, the 2023 class that had 3 members. Of those 13, all of them were from the Mississippi or Dallas to the east. Exactly 0. And also centennial, the 5 contributors and coaches, none of them from the west, basically. And that's kind of a selling point. I'm not going to push it that much, but I want the selectors to know that that's a potential issue.
But it's worth talking about, because like when Evan and I put together a lot of the crews that we do.
Yeah. Well,
we put so much effort in trying to get everything across, and it's not where we want it to be. Evan, you'd agree with that, right? But we try.
Yeah, but I'm going to throw one more thing into. It's important. Okay, we were talking about like Floyd Little and Gradishar or Riley, or what happens with Anderson. For example, the Raiders had Cliff Branch. He finally gets into like a seniors class 2022 instead of 2020. That pushes back the Raiders a couple years right? And also if Lester Hayes or whomever that they want to have as their next legit Hall of Famer, that guy can be like, well, you just got Cliff Branch in a couple years ago. Same thing. If Randy gets in, and I know John Turney was going crazy today about Carl Mecklenburg's viability. But like if the Broncos would have another senior like Louis Wright or someone that might be viable, then well, you guys can wait 5 years. You got Gradishar and we threw you a bone. It doesn't work that way for the AFC and NFC East guys that have a lot more selectors there, or Dallas guys lately, Chicago. Sorry, Jack and Jeff. But I mean, it's a different dynamic to be aware of. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's a good dynamic to be aware of. I think you're spot on the Centennial. I don't see the point of just looking at the Centennial plus this year. I mean, if you look at like since 2010 or like since 2000, and then it's pretty spread out with the exception of a few teams. But it's not geographic because the Raiders send in a lot of people.
Yeah, but it's 2 out of 18. Seniors. It's 2 out of 18 from 2017 to the present.
Okay, that's a good stat. From 2017 to the present.
With Cliff Branch and Johnny Robinson as the only 2 that are to the west of that line, and Robinson obviously just barely, but AFC West.
But even then, Johnny Robinson was a part of the Chiefs. Like if there's one AFL team that the committee's loved over the years, or the process has loved over the years, is the Chiefs.
I'm not sure the current committees are aware the AFL was a thing. So
yeah, that's true.
Todd Tobias really needs to push a lot more. Todd Tobias really needs to push
a lot of Chiefs in there from the 60s.
So I've got a question for all of you here. Of the 6 who were not, I guess of the lower 6 of the 12, Metter, Nobis,
Bond, Isbell, Anderson, and Walls.
Who has the best chance to elevate?
Bond, I think, has the best chance because you have this backlog of linebackers that you have Gradishar that was in the final 6. You have Bond, who has been a big push recently, and then you also have Tommy Nobis, who was a finalist also in 2020 as well. And plus, the Falcons also need more Hall of Famers. I'll say it right here. But then you also look at other linebackers too, like obviously I'm going to mention Clay Matthews because he was a semifinalist, but also don't forget. Well, I'm saying in terms of like another one that they might be thinking of, but also there's a Larry Grantham, there's also a Joe Fortunato, and there's several other names as well. But in terms of who I think is most likely, because of the backlog of linebackers, I think they'd go with Bond.
Does Meador's presence on there, being from that same era of Rams team, does that hurt Bond? I know he started his career with the Eagles the first few years, but I think he's most closely associated with the Rams. Like you do have two players from that defense from that same era that at the end of the day didn't really win crap. Like,
they don't care. They want their guy in.
I mean, that's the anti-Pat Swilling thing, because those Saints teams didn't win anything either. Ricky Jackson and Samuels already in. Could we put a third linebacker from the team?
Right, but Pat Swilling also wouldn't be on the ballot against Mills or Jackson, whereas
right, because now they're both in. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, does that hurt one or both of them because it's the presence of 2 teammates from that same team? Do they kind of cancel each other out? I might be overthinking it, but I'm just wondering, like, because neither of them got into.
Well, we've got that now, Jeff, with indirectly with Riley Parrish. Somehow, if Riley gets in, what does this do for Lamar Parrish? And I don't know.
I don't think it does anything in the short term because he can't even crack the top 25.
I guess not. Or does it help him crack the top 25?
Well, but we don't know the answer to that yet because we'll know when we see what they do next year. Because this is the question of where did the Qs reset? So, yeah, today no one's talking about Parrish, and tomorrow they could be, and then the next year he could be in. I mean, we've seen some things move.
Yeah, that happened with Ricky Jackson. Ricky Jackson came from nowhere. And then all of a sudden,
it's in.
Yeah, it's so true because if we did this 10 years ago, we would not be talking about 2 of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
And no disrespect to Klecko and Ryan.
Right, and not a single stat change, not a single award was revoted. No one's pursuing an ankle. They've been retired that whole time.
Yeah, but Joe
Which of the
Flacco was in the Cannonball Run.
which finalists do you see actually missing out next year?
Ooh.
Tommy Nobis.
Hmm.
They're just really.
I could
Balls.
Maybe.
see Walls or Novus. Those two I can see as like the main, the main most likely ones.
If
We're
Gary
rich
Myers
enough
is still on
always
the
here.
committee, Walls got there this year, I'd be
Well-
hard pressed to believe he would fall down.
Well, you do have-
I'm gonna go with Anderson. I think it's gonna be Anderson. I think Anderson's gonna be left off this list next year. I truly believe it. As much as I've been
He would move
advocating
up, Ryan.
for Anderson to get in, I think he is like the log jam. It's gonna hurt him. I truly believe it because, as you guys said, the Bengal fan, the committee's gonna be like, "Look, we gave you Ken Riley. You want another person in?
Something
We,
to
we,
that.
what more do
That's
you
their
do?"
I mean, Vinny, tell them, that's their expectation. Is that Ken Anderson next year?
Well, I'll tell you. Actually, I can tell you this: they don't expect Ken Anderson next year.
Oh, that's
Ken
good.
Anderson's the one that they're gonna be pushing for like the entire like slate, because their whole push before was put Ken in, as in whether Riley or Anderson make
Okay.
it, you would still go. But now that Riley's in, there would be put Anderson in, as in Willie and Ken. So they're putting a lot of their stock in Ken Anderson, but they don't expect him for at least another couple of years.
Who are three guys that everybody thinks might move up then? Because if we're gonna have Howley and Klecko and Riley get in, then your 12 finalists were now 9. Like, who's the 3 that can move up? Is that somebody like Roger Craig? Is that somebody?
I hope so.
Lester
Clay
Hayes.
Matthews.
Lester Hayes. Oh God, Ron, that sounds just about the way the process is working.
Oh,
Please.
he's got a campaign.
Right.
Please put in Laverne Dilwig. I am begging you. Whatever you do, your 3 needs to include Mr. Laverne Dilwig. Former former U.S. House of Representatives representing the state of Wisconsin. Like.
Oh yeah, because being a government representative really is going to help.
I think Nobis will be strong because when they went from 9 to 12, they added the gentleman from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So he'll have a voice. Yeah, and they'll have a
Vinny,
voice.
Does that mean Herschel Walker's got a shot then?
Oh.
No, because
Sorry, get done. Sorry.
Let's move
no,
on.
because if I was going to push for someone that would have
I'm big on
representative.
Herschel Walker for the Hall, by the way. I just want to.
No, other than Dilwig, it would easily be Jack Kemp. I know Jeff hates it when I say it, but yeah, I would.
Jack. Yeah.
So the 12.
I mean, Herschel Walker would have had a strong if his career was worth he got 2 second team All Pros, 2 Pro Bowls, but no.
Oh, right. I'm huge on Herschel Walker, as all of these guys can tell you. Having said that, he's not doing himself a big favor.
No.
Interviews are horrible. Oh my god! Like objectively, they're like.
So who else can move up though into the 12?
Okay, look
Right,
at
so, guys-
Jeff bringing us back.
No, right.
Who called that?
First time for
No, hold on.
everything.
So here are the 12 people who made the finalists or made the semifinalist list but didn't make it. So we have
Oh,
Mark Clayton, Roger Craig. Or did I cut out?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm in a room. I'm in a room away from everybody because they're all making noise upstairs. So Mark Clayton, Roger Craig, Lavi Dilwig, Lester Hayes, Chris Hinton, Joe Jacoby, Billy White Shoes Johnson, Mike Ken, George Kuntz, Jim Marshall, Clay Matthews. I guess I have senior, but I guess he's technically junior. Stanley Morgan, Otis Taylor, and those are the ones we missed.
And does Steve
the
Tasker
first
get
one that sticks
added?
out to me is Jacoby.
And Jack, is it next year that Steve Tasker would get added to the senior pool?
Yeah.
Yes.
The amazing thing is, I think when we're looking at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, like of the list that Evan just mentioned, we could make a Super Bowl dynasty out of those players, which kind of reflects just how far backlogged everything is. Can we agree on that? Or
Absolutely. I'd say so. Now, out of those three, who do you think would get pushed up?
Craig?
Okay, well, who are your other
I
two?
would have to go with Craig as well. I would have to go with Craig. I think Craig has a very compelling case to move up.
I think it's Lester Hayes, because if you put Ken Riley in, this is Lester Hayes. Didn't he lead the league in interceptions once with 13? That was his defensive player of the year. Like, he's got some of the Pro Bowl, all pro accoutrements, but maybe he's also hurt because of the fact he's a Raider, because people associate him with Stickum. Like,
The Stickum factor, his hands getting stuck together.
yeah, that's right. But is it Jacoby? Like, as an
Love Jacoby.
because we had 3 defensive guys get in this time. Like, could it be Jacoby? It feels like it should be Craig, with the lack of running back representation. Like, that's the one they feel like should be standing out. And in the modern game, his pass receiving numbers, like, I think he had seasons where he was like top 5, top 7, top 10 in the league in receptions as a fullback. Technically, the running back as a fullback. It feels like he's the guy that would benefit, to Jack's point, like the way the game has changed, like the views would be different. Like, it feels like Craig would be viewed differently from a modern lens than when he was in the kind of modern pool. But it doesn't seem like he's getting past that semifinal point.
Here's one that I don't think people are really mentioning, because, even though they didn't give official lists for finalists before, there was one wide receiver that actually was mentioned a few times as opposed to for their 12, and that actually was Stanley Morgan. Morgan actually made it, in their list, a few times. Now, would he be the one from that era I would go for? No, I think the one from that era they should go for, in my opinion, is Harold Jackson, bar none. But then Harold Jackson, in my opinion, he led the entire decade of the 70s in receptions, yards, and touchdowns, but yet he somehow didn't make the all-decade team. I have no idea.
As the Patriots fan on this panel, I will say Stanley Morgan is one of my favorite players from growing up. Talking about the one stat, he is the most yards per reception of anybody at whatever certain level they cut it off. His average yards per reception is like 19 point something. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
All right. I think for the interest of time, just
I'm just saying, Stanley Morgan has no business being in the Hall of Fame.
No,
Yep.
but I think what we should all do right now is
Patriots legend.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. So we're doing this before the announcement of the contributor / coach.
You mean Robert Kraft's coronation?
Someone interesting?
The Robert Kraft coronation.
So yeah, I think so too.
You'll be a happy ending. Don't worry.
Will they massage the?
Damn it, that's my fucking joke.
Oops. Sorry, I just knocked over my phone.
But okay. I was gonna ask everyone this.
Rub it out, Kirk.
Well done. Well done.
Just don't go to Cleveland and have the massage therapist convention.
Yeah, I mean, here's a question. Does the NFL want to put in Robert Kraft with what's going on with Cleveland right now?
What
The
difference
NFL
does it
has
make?
no choice.
Yes, they don't care.
Yeah.
Okay, Robert Kraft. Okay,
Moving on.
the person who okay, I'll be blunt. The person who jerked off Robert Kraft knew that she was going to jerk off whoever the hell that was. She probably didn't know who that was. The people who Deshaun Watson did not know that they were going to jerk off Deshaun.
Well, was it jerking off, or were they sticking like their fingers in the butthole and stuff? Like,
No, what I'm saying.
Whichever. I mean, like, I could give a crap if a senior citizen who was unmarried and divorced at that, or no.
No, he's widowed.
Widowed at the time.
Myra died in 2011.
Okay, who gives a crap?
yeah, the NFL certainly doesn't. So, barring a miraculous upset, it's going to be.
Neither do I, frankly.
Yeah.
So I really don't. I'm pro, and Evan can tell you this. Like, I'm big on Robert Kraft, and I'm not a Pats guy.
I thought you were about to say I'm pro prostitute, and Evan can tell you this. And I was ready for the bombshell of this show's young life.
Yeah, that's my take, and I'll open up the floor.
The funniest person they could elect this week is Art Modell. But
What?
that would be the funniest.
Or Modell will be the funniest that they would elect.
Oh God, could we make a push just to have that happen?
Oh my God.
Joe Thomas, you're gonna have Ken Riley. So Ohio we giveth, and we're gonna take it away.
Okay, which one of us lives closest to Modell's grave? To sort of like take video of that.
You know whose grave I actually was by today, actually?
Where?
Jovan Belcher's grave.
Wait, where's Joe
That's-
buried at?
That is so.
That's
Remember
unfortunate.
Jovan Belcher? Remember that
Yeah,
story?
Yvonne Bell.
Where's he buried at?
Yeah.
North Babylon. He lives in North Babylon, which is a town right next to mine.
You're gonna go on the Jim Trier tour. Lord.
Listen, I think that there's actually a real push saying that, he actually might not be as bad as you think. Objectively. I mean,
Is that from
well,
Chris
that's from some
Benoit's
people.
family?
Well,
hey, listen, that's what some people are saying. I'm not saying it would be for me. I'm saying that for some other ones, they're, looking a
I
little
would
bit different.
expect dumb wrestling fans to say that about Chris Benoit.
I was about to say who
I
gets
did
the
that
Hall
for
of
you,
Fame
Jeff.
first.
I did that for you,
Benoit.
Jeff. I figured you'd get that joke.
Yeah, like he only it was only his wife and kid. I mean, he was a really in that moment of
Hey,
wrestling.
he didn't kill the other kid, so there you go.
Oh, that speaking of poor man, poor kid. God, trying to live up to
And
that.
once again, I mean, we don't know for sure that CTE was involved, but I would bet most of what I own that CTE was involved in what Jim Tyler did. So
Yeah, but
I
at
agree.
the end of the day, a lot of people have CTE. Some unfortunately they think about Junior Seau, Dave Dorson, like there's some that killed themselves and they found out CTE. There are also plenty of other
Andre
people.
Waters did too, right?
well, no. Demarius Thomas had seizures because of the hits he took in the NFL, and they just did the full autopsy, and he had pretty severe CTE.
CTE.
Yeah, but Demarius Thomas didn't go around killing his wife and his kid.
No, but still, he was like early 30s when he had the seizures and passed away. And they did,
Mike Webster, remember the end of his life? Was the
Oh,
same.
geez. He was like living out of vans or something like that. Like he was like homeless. His like wife kicked him out.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's a lot of players that have had some like very tragic ends. I was in school when Junior Seau died, and I remember the day that I heard it, the news. When I heard the news, I was like, oh my God! Like, he was like 47. He wasn't even that old, and it's like you think about it. Like I was talking about it on my podcast with a friend of mine, Shay, shout out to my homegirl Shay, and we were talking about, New Orleans, the whole Bounty Gate thing, which happened around that time. I said to someone, it's amazing, like some of the players that we grew up watching, they're no longer with us. Like I grew up watching Junior Seau. He's gone. I mean, there are so many players that have had tragic endings in football. And I always believe that when the Bounty Gate happened, and this is just my opinion, I always believe that the NFL wanted to look for a boogeyman, and they found it in the Saints. They found it in us in 2012, right around the time when Junior Seau died. I always believed that that's what they wanted, and they wanted to have a boogeyman.
Yeah,
And
because Greg Williams is a piece of crap. Like they found the boogeyman because he's garbage. Like
Greg Williams, Greg Williams is garbage. But the fucked up part about it, I always tell people this, and my homegirl Shay will tell you this. Sean Payton was never the same man.
Sorry, guys, I gotta hit the road.
Yeah, we should wrap this up, guys, as we're coming up.
Wait, should we talk about potential things they could do after 2025? Like, do we personally?
We have other shows for that later.
Okay, but I'm like, here's a question: if it's not Robert Kraft, who could the choice by the contributor panel? Huh?
No, just saying goodbye to Jack.
If it's not
Robert Kraft, okay.
If it wasn't Robert Kraft, who could we see it being? Could we see a coach? Could we see Don Coryell?
I would love to see Lloyd Wells.
I would say Mike Shanahan, Dan Reeves. I think they have strong cases.
Holmgren probably does too, as a coach and GM.
I would love to see Bucko Kilroy, especially if you consider, his playing career with the Eagles.
That.
And like you also, and I'm someone who lists contributors for what you do for your entire career.
Not
So
you.
no, it is what I do.
That's what it should be.
Sarcasm.
Yeah.
But guys like Pat Summerall should be the Football Hall of Fame.
I think he should. I think he should as well as Chris Vernon.
What's wrong with Pat Summerall?
Huh?
No, there's nothing wrong with Pat Summerall. He should also be in. That's what we're
in the
saying.
Hall of Fame.
Okay, yeah, all right, sorry.
But Vinny, like, I know we can mention a bunch of names, but the question is, like, outside of Robert Kraft, maybe like who's one or two. I heard somebody say Lloyd Wells, which is
actually, I should say this, Bill. Lloyd Wells is actually not a finalist,
No.
but I do know who. But here's the thing: when it comes to coaching in particular, there was a name actually that was runner-up the last 2 years before it went to Flores and Vermeil, and that was Buddy Parker, who was, the head coach and, the leader of that, Lions dynasty. Obviously, I know that he left just before their third one, but that was still his team at the end of the day.
Yep.
Could they potentially go with, if it's not Kraft, could they potentially say, hey, he's been a runner-up the last couple of years, let's put in Buddy Parker? Do you see that could happen in the same way that there was?
He should get extra credits for just having a good Lions team.
Well, those Lions teams were absolutely dominant during that time.
No, but I'm 43 years old. The Lions have won one playoff game in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Unless you don't count.
I can't wait till the Kirk Buchner 50th anniversary celebration.
For the Lions, unless you count their three straight playoff
It's not completely, but okay, go on.
I mean, if for the Lions, if you don't count their 3 playoff bowl victories, they've only won one since 1957. What do you want to do for your 50th birthday celebration? Honestly, that's a good question.
Celebrate the Red Wings?
No,
I don't know.
Colorado do not allow that.
Oh.
It's going to be an avalanche of full-blooded fisticuffs. You say that.
Actually, you're saying that. Why don't we celebrate the Nordiques for that? Because that was your favorite team growing up.
Fuck off.
No, I know. I'm serious.
And we're giving
They don't exist anymore. God damn it.
I don't know that reverse retro looked really spot on with the maroon and the powder blue.
Didn't the Nordiques win the Stanley Cup this year? Oh no, they moved.
Yes, we did.
2-time National Cup champion.
Y'all beat my
WHA.
Now, I will say this about, if you're talking about contributors and stuff like that, is Modell in that final group?
He is in
Yes.
the final group.
Oh,
I think
there's a God.
Just think of what could happen. 2023, you got the Bengals fans there with Ken Riley drowning everyone out. Joe Thomas, first ballot Hall of Famer. And then this man like doing the little celebration dance with Art Modell and just smiling at the Cleveland people.
Like a Bengal Jim thing?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Jim's awesome.
He's
Jim,
an awesome guy.
he really is. He is very down to earth. And no. Jim is truly a great guy.
I could get 2 shits about that. I'm laughing about Art Modell. Like we're magnificent Art Modell in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, listen, I have no problems with it because hey, if you're gonna defecate on that guy's grave, I don't care.
So he should defecate on Cleveland. Revenge from beyond the grave.
Okay,
Hey, it was
on
Cleveland's
that
in
note,
one in the first place.
guys, it's almost 2 hours.
Happy that the T-shirt moment.
Okay.
Defecate on Cleveland.
With that,
Jeez.
the show is closed. The show is closed. It's been 2 hours. I think that's enough. Evan, let's promote some shit, huh?
Yeah.
I thought we just did with our T-shirt idea.
Exactly.
No, so
Guys, I wrote a book.
Oh,
We're promote with that first. I wrote a book, Chavo Guerrero Instant Classic. Get that on Amazon.com. And Evan, let's promote our other stuff.
again, we should go up with the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. First class is coming out November 1st. Vote early, vote often.
Every day.
Once a day.
Yep.
And we're going to have contributors. We're going to have coaches, and we're going to have players and athletes all the way through. So they have to have been born before 1970. If you're wondering why, I don't know, Tiger Woods isn't there, it's because not old enough yet.
But Al Bundy
so-
will be right. First ballot.
Al Bundy?
I'm sorry.
Okay, fictitious athlete Hall of Fame, which we also own, and he's already in.
Oh, of course he was. I mean, that was a given.
It wasn't a given. It took the fourth until the Evan was fourth, fifth year.
Well, that's a broken process.
I didn't hear who it was. I froze for a second.
One man,
Al Bundy.
4 touchdowns in a
Al
single.
Bundy was.
Four
Al
touchdowns.
Bundy.
He averaged 4 touchdowns in one game, right?
He didn't average 4 touchdowns in one game, but he did have 4 touchdowns in one game.
In that one game, he averaged 4
Chicago.
touchdowns.
Yes.
Don't let your facts. Don't let your facts get in the way of our narrative.
All right. Well, I've got 2 other things to promote, if I could. If I could.
It's your show, boy, bro.
Yeah, I know, right? It's only your
Thank you.
show.
Thank you. And all of you can be guests on it, by the way. I think you should. I think some of you would be great guests on this. We also do How the Hell Did This Go #1? Where we look at dumb songs that went #1. I recorded Kokomo. I recorded Karma, 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 Chameleon. And
What about
next
tub
week,
dumping? What about tub dumping? Because that was like my 7th grade song.
well, guess who's going to be a guest for that? You. But not yet, because next week we're looking at Olivia Newton-John, Physical.
Oh,
And if you want to hear about me being physical, well, you probably don't, but we're going to be doing that next week. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Also,
About the songs, I was thinking, like, are you guys going to talk about Ricky Martin and his love of his nephew?
eventually, eventually, but we're going to be doing that.
Yeah, they had a very close relationship, let's just say.
Yes, they sure did.
I did not.
Oh, yes. Well,
Okay, Evan, defend me, because you've been a guest on that show.
Mhm.
It's a great show.
Yeah. Right. What's up with
Well,
Ricky
no, I
Martin's
was saying this
relationship
is
with his
Ricky
nephew?
Martin and his nephew.
Dun, 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 dun. Also-
I got the joke.
No, okay. After my plugs. Speaking of Ricky
Plugs?
Martin.
You're saying plugs and Ricky Martin while Jeff's
What
doing
plugs?
this.
All right, just keep going. Keep going.
Thank you. Okay. Also, this crap was on national television where Chris Burnett and we just looked at the Harlem Globetrotters visit Gilligan's Island.
yes.
Oh, awesome.
Excellent
yeah.
They
episode.
had their own cartoon show where they solved crimes.
And they were,
Yes!
yeah, they, I love that one. And also when they met Scooby-Doo, don't forget.
Well, of course.
We didn't go through that. We just went with it when they went to Gilligan's Island for fuck.
I'm
Well, they
still
should have
telling
killed
you, dude.
Gillian.
I'm telling you, dude. Please, 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 at some point here, do Man versus Beast. I want that episode.
Oh, you're definitely a guest on that.
Or man versus food.
Man versus, but well, I don't know if you remember, Ryan. You might be too young for Man versus Beast. It happened around 2000, 2001 on Fox, where they had humans.
I remember that. I remember that. I think
Yeah,
I saw this in 22 episodes.
They had humans take on animals. And my favorite part was they had a sprinter going against a zebra.
Yep.
And the commentators, I remember who the normal commentator was, but the color commentator was Carl Lewis.
Yep.
And Carl Lewis gave his keys to the race. And was the zebra's got to have a good start. It's got to run hard and fast, and it's got to realize it's in a race.
I got to say one thing really quickly. I think it was a Super 70 Sports Twitter feed put out earlier today. This
Awesome feed.
80s, they had like Joe Pesci starring, and it also had like the Spuds McKenzie dog, for those of you that are like me, very old.
Yes.
The show had Dick Butkus and Dean Martin and Bubba Smith. How that only lasts like 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about the
We are a country in a death spiral, Jeff. That's why.
I mean, it's like it's
Thank you,
it's
Bill.
like when Dana Carvey had his show in like what was it, the 90s, and you had people like Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Fallon and a bunch of other people that got their start.
No, Vinny, that is absolutely not. That is completely ridiculous. I want you to understand what I'm saying. You have no concept of this because you were not around for the 80s. Spuds McKenzie, he called him Hunk, but he came
In the Hall of Fame.
he came in the credits before Dick Butkus,
Yes.
Bubba Smith, who were huge at the time with the Miller Lite commercials, and Dean frickin' Martin from the Rat Pack. They had Victoria Jackson.
Yep.
No, it is not similar. The Dana Carvey show sucked donkey. This looked like something that should have been a 6 or 7 year run of sitcom spectacular. Joe Pesci was a star.
Joe Pesci. Yeah.
That'll.
I thought I was the
absolutely.
one who was drunk, but anyway.
Could be worse for Carvey. He
I'm just
could,
an idiot. That's a
it
difference.
could be worse for Carvey. Have you seen Master of Disguise?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
just keep going.
fantastic.
Keep going. Finish this up, Kirk. Finish
All
this
right,
up.
okay, I'm wrapping it up. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, thank you all and stay safe, everyone.
Take care.